Bedford Jane Doe. October 6, 1971. A hunter in Bedford, New Hampshire, discovered the body of a woman in a wooded area near a logging road. It's believed that the woman died around 3 months before her body was found, and although a cause of death cannot be established, foul play is suspected, owing to the secluded nature of the area her body was found in. Over the last 50 years, investigators have produced new sketches and busts of Bedford Jane Doe in the hope that someone would recognise them, but nothing has come of this so far. All that's known is that she was likely between 20 and 40 years old when she died, and that the clothes she was wearing hint at a possible link to Canada. But after the DNA Doe project, otherwise known as the DDP, took on the case and uploaded her DNA profile to Gedmatch, they found a relative of hers with whom she shares 160 centimoles, cm, of DNA, meaning they're likely her second cousin once removed, or a similar relationship in that range. For reference, the DDP recently announced they'd identified another homicide victim, called Live Oak Doe, whose closest genetic match shared only 106 cm of DNA with them. This shows that it's perfectly possible to identify someone with a match of that caliber, and although this might take a little longer to solve than some of the other cases in this video, I suspect that Bedford Jane Doe will have been identified by the end of 2021. Nation River Lady. May the 3rd, 1975. In Castleman, a small town in Ontario, a farmer found a woman's body floating down the South Nation River. Her hands and ankles had been tied up, and she'd been strangled to death with a television cable, before being thrown off a bridge into the river. She's estimated to have been between 25 and 50 years old when she died, may have had Irish heritage, but for over 45 years now, no one has been able to identify her. However, after the DNA Doe project uploaded the Nation River Lady's DNA profile to Family Tree DNA, they found that she shared a massive 445 centimorgans of DNA with someone in the database, likely a first cousin once removed or around that range. This means that the Nation River Lady is within touching distance of being reunited with her name, and I expect that she'll be identified very soon, if she hasn't been already. Grundy County Jane Doe. October the 2nd, 1976. On the side of a highway in Seneca, Illinois, a farmer and his granddaughter discovered the body of a woman in a ditch. She'd been shot in the back of the head and was completely naked, except for a sweater tied around her head. Although police have spent decades trying to identify her, they didn't have much success until the DNA Doe project took on the case, at which point leads began rolling in. They discovered that she was probably born between 1948 and 1960, her parents may well have come from Selma, and she was likely descended from the Calhoun and Harris families. They also found a close relative of hers, likely a niece or first cousin, living in Alabama, but it appears that her biological family may have been unaware of her existence, which makes identifying her trickier. Still, with everything they know, it looks like the DNA Doe project are closing in on Grundy County Jane Doe's identity, so I'm hopeful that they'll be able to confirm it by the end of the year. Kern County Jane Doe. July 14th, 1980. In Delano, California, the body of a woman was discovered in an almond orchard. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered, with the man responsible later being identified as Wilson Schwest, who was convicted of killing her and another woman in 2018. Although their killer is now in prison, neither woman has been identified, which led to the DNA Doe project taking on their cases a few years ago. Since then, they've made significant progress in identifying Kern County Jane Doe. For example, it's now known that she was of partial Indigenous Canadian ancestry, with one of her ancestors being a member of the Cree Nation. She also has a match on Family Tree DNA with whom she shares 239 centimorgans of DNA, so they may well be a second cousin of hers. The DNA Doe project have been working on this case for quite a while now, but with such a high match to work with, it seems plausible that this will be the year that Kern County Jane Doe finally gets her name back. Pulaski County Jane Doe. May the 25th, 1981. Law enforcement agents near Dixon, Missouri, recovered the body of a woman from a low-water crossing. She'd only died around 24 hours prior to her discovery and had been murdered by an unknown assailant, having been strangled to death. She was estimated to be between 25 and 40 years old, and it's believed that she grew up in the southeast of the United States, based on isotope testing. However, these clues alone have not been enough to identify her so far, which led to the DNA Doe project taking on her case and finding a solid lead in the form of 273 cm match on Gedmatch, so likely a second cousin, or in that range. The DNA Doe project have not uploaded her DNA data to Family Tree DNA, which suggests that her Gedmatch matches are proving sufficient enough to identify her, so this is another case I'd expect to be solved this year. Mowry Wetlands Jane Doe, October 24th, 1985. In a field in Newark, California, the remains of a young woman were found in a field next to Mowry Avenue, which led to the moniker Mowry Wetlands Jane Doe. She was a murder victim, having been shot dead around 6 months before her body was discovered, though the motive for her killing isn't yet known. At the time she died, she was probably between 30 and 36 years old, and although she spent the 36 years since without a name, this year seems destined to be the last. After her DNA was uploaded to Family Tree DNA, a match in the database came up as sharing 486 centimorgans of DNA with her, so probably a first cousin once removed or a relationship in that range. This is a very strong match for the seasoned genealogists at the DNA Doe project to work with, so surprises aside, I'm confident that Mowry Wetlands Jane Doe will be identified this year. Charlene Doe, August 5th, 1988. The charred remains of a man and a woman were found in the Willow Slough Fish and Wildlife Area in Morocco, Indiana. A year after the discovery, the male victim was identified as Selassie Sherrod Jr., but the identity of the female victim is still unknown. There's been speculation that she was linked to criminal activities, and that these activities are what led to her murder, but little else is known about her, other than that she was between 18 and 45 years old when she died. Since the DNA Doe project uploaded her DNA profile to Gedmatch, more details have emerged. Her admixture report shows that she was of African heritage, as previously thought, and that she has a match of 335 centimorgans with some in the database, probably in the first cousin once removed to second cousin relationship range. The DNA Doe project have already solved 6 cases since the start of the year, and it wouldn't be surprising if Charlene Doe is identified within the coming months as well. Marion County John Doe, July 19th, 1989. The body of a man was discovered entangled in weeds on the bank of a creek in Caledonia, Ohio. The body had lain there for 3 weeks and had decomposed significantly in that time, so a cause of death could not be identified, but a mark on his neck, alongside other details, have led investigators to believe that he was murdered. It's also believed that he was between 22 and 40 years old at the time of his death, and that he wasn't local to the area, as any disappearance would have been noted in such a small community. Whether or not these details are true will likely be confirmed at some point in the coming months, as the DNA Doe project have found a 420 centimorgan match for him on Family Tree DNA, after uploading his DNA profile to their database. This match is probably a first cousin once removed, or somewhere in that range, and with a match this high, it should be fairly easy to identify Marion County John Doe by the end of this year. New Britain Jane Doe, October 11th, 1991. A surveying crew in New Britain, Connecticut, found the decomposed remains of a woman in multiple garbage bags across from the vacant Fafnir bearing plant. Like nearly all the other people featured in this video, she had been murdered, having been shot in the head earlier that year, and unfortunately her killer still hasn't been found. Before the DNA Doe project took on her case, investigators weren't even sure of her ethnicity, but it's now known that she was of Puerto Rican heritage, with specific ties to the city of Mocha. She also has a 254 centimorgan match on Gedmatch, likely in the second cousin range, so while the relative inaccessibility of Puerto Rican records might make her identification trickier, it's still very much possible that she'll be identified this year. Apache Junction Jane Doe, August 6th, 1992. A man walking his dog in Apache Junction, Arizona, found the body of a young woman in a desert area near a dirt road. Her remains had been there for around 3 to 5 weeks prior to the discovery of her body, and the extent of the decomposition meant that a cause of death could not be determined. A student fare token valid for the Phoenix transit system was found in her pocket, but that lead ended up fizzling out and the case soon went cold. However, the DNA Doe project took on the case in 2018 and have since found out much more about her origins. For one thing, we now know that she was mixed race, with one parent of Mexican heritage and one parent of African American heritage, with roots in Virginia. On top of this, an 184 centimorgan match to her has been found on Gedmatch, with this person likely being in the second cousin once removed range, so hopefully this will be enough for them to finally identify her after nearly 30 years of anonymity. Tukwila Doe, January 8th, 1997. The excavation of a new home in Tukwila, Washington, was interrupted when skeletal remains were discovered on the site. It's suspected that the remains could be of another victim of the prolific serial killer Gary Ridgway. though at the time of the discovery, the only conclusion that investigators could draw was that the remains were of an adult female. However, in a surprising twist, NamUs recently altered its profile for Tukwila Doe to list the gender as male rather than female, so it seems that DNA testing has revealed the Doe's biological sex to be male. Women's lace underwear was found near the remains, so it's possible that the victim was a trans woman, but not much is known about the circumstances at present. This seems unlikely to last for long though, as the DNA Doe project have revealed that they found a 489 centimorph match for Tukwila Doe and Gedmatch, a match larger than any of the other cases featured in this video. This match is likely in the first cousin once removed range, which is likely close enough for the DNA Doe project to identify Tukwila Doe with relative ease, and an announcement will hopefully be forthcoming by the end of the year. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like it and subscribe, as there's a part 2 video coming soon on the DNA Doe project cases from the 2000s and 2010s that I believe will be solved in 2021 as well. If there are any developments regarding these cases, then I'll post update videos to spread the news, so if you're interested, then watch this space.